And then I find in my limited experience with being transported or a vessel of good writing of greatness, my very limited experience of that, I find that it doesn't happen unless you've shown up and unless you've done, put the discipline in, and like Shakespeare, for example, and I can't imagine he wasn't smart enough to realize he was doing this at a certain point and kept doing it. I mean, Shakespeare is obviously unparalleled as a writing genius. But I always say a couple things. I always say that it's comforting to know that even he could write something like, Timon of Athens, which is not a great play. So like I always comfort myself with that. But if you notice a lot of his great, memorable pieces of writing, he balances his sentences better than anyone else I've ever read. So he'll literally, it's almost like his sentences are like a scale, and he's weighing things up.
Do you have
So
an example?
I don't know, I have a ton of examples and they've all flown in my head, but I promise I'll come up with one. But
Okay.
Hamlet has a ton of them where he's saying, okay, his very last soliloquy, the very last line of his first soliloquy, where he's complaining about how awful life is, and he's in deep mourning. It starts with this too solid flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew. But he goes on, and he talks about how horrible things are, and then he hears people coming, and then his last line is, but um, but break my heart, for I must hold my tongue. That's the balance I'm talking about. Break my heart, hold my tongue. It's
Mm-hmm.
verb and noun usually, um,
Mm-hmm.
that he does. And I don't think he necessarily invented it, but he certainly perfected it. And
Mm-hmm.
that was a well he was not afraid to dip into constantly, because it works. It
Mm-hmm.
works very well. And so, me being conscious of that in terms of calibrating sentences, for example, is never going to make me Shakespeare, but it's going to make me a little bit better than I would have been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.